Good evening, everybody. This is the first sentence I learned in Latin, and the last one, actually. Homo homini lupus, which means, out of context, it means people are wolves for people. So maybe it can evoke this image of people are nasty, life is brutish and short, and we have to be careful about others. And the competition that we see between the great powers is totally natural because people are wolves for people. But however, when you really look at the behavior of wolves, yes, if they are hungry, they will attack a prey, but they take care of their young, they have great solidarity, they take care of each other, they travel in packs. So there's also very good things about wolves. And the subtitle is a story that I will share in the next slide about the wolf you feed. So to talk about something I really don't understand, which is the rivalry between the United States and China, I decided to take two symbols. So on the left, you have Miss Bald Eagle. Let's call her Miss Eagle. That represents the United States as a player in international relations. And on the right, you have Miss Giant Panda, Miss Panda, who represents China. So I'm sure you heard that story before. I give it a little bit of a piece studies twist. There are two wolves fighting inside each of us. That means each of you and me too. Two wolves. One uses violence and destruction. So sometimes we raise our voice, or we bang our fist on the table, or we're not happy, or we send a very nasty email. It happens. The other one practices respect for the dignity of life. And they're always fighting together within us. Which one will win? The one you feed. So I think it's important because if you read some type of news without filtering, you will have the impression that some countries are becoming worse and worse, more evil, less democratic, more violent. And we have to be very careful about that kind of stereotyping, which seems to be really rampant today. So actually, there are at least two wolves. There's lots of wolves, but let's keep it at two. There are two wolves within Miss Eagle, and there's also two wolves within Miss Panda. And so the question, which one are you going to feed? So I think nobody in the room or myself, Maria and Namrata, we have really a great say in international relations or in what the great powers decide to do. However, we influence the fabric of society, our communities, the people next to us all the time. And this has a ripple effect that, travels throughout humanity. So each one of us is extremely important. And if we feel that we don't live in a society where we are that is really based on meaningful dialogue, well, it's up to each of us to start. We shouldn't wait for somebody else to start, right? So by deciding which wolf we feed within us and what kind of news we read, what kind of actions we take, we can definitely have some kind of impact, even if we don't see it, on the rivalry between the United States and China. So I would suggest more, instead of a black and white way of looking at things, where a great democratic power for freedom and the other one a terrible dictatorship, I think that's really, really too simple. And the yin and yang provide a better way to look at life, where you have the negative parts are inside the positive ones, and within the positive ones, there's a little dot with positive parts. And so a more nuanced and mixed vision of international relations. Now, a few facts. You see the numbers near Miss Eagle, 750 and 80, and then near Miss Panda, 10 and 3. So 10 and 3, 10 means that if you count the military bases that were built on islands in the South China Sea in the last few years, Ms. Panda has a total of 10 military bases in the world outside of their territory, outside of China, and in 3 different territories, 2 different countries plus the South China Sea. And there's been a lot of news about that. And why are they building military bases? What are they doing? They're trying to conquer the world. Well, just as a reminder, the United States has 750 military bases outside its territory in 80 different countries. Now, very alarming news about what might happen between the 2 countries, or between the West and China in general. I just received this invitation for an international conference, and I'm just going to read the text so that I don't deviate. The organization is called Conversation at the Crossroads, and it's based at the University of Melbourne in Australia. And the title of the conference is Australia and the Prospect of US-China War. It's written just like that. An invitation to join the conversation, Tuesday, May 2nd, so it's coming up soon. And a few topics. Australia's economy remains highly dependent on trade with China, yet we are enmeshed in US war planning. Is this two-track policy sustainable? Will Australia be at war with China should armed conflict over Taiwan erupt in the next few years? If the downward spiral in US-China relations continues unabated, can the world adequately deal with the major challenges we presently face? Climate change, pandemics, financial crisis, rising danger of nuclear war. So this is very, very bad news that we have to start discussing about those things. And I would say even worse, in an article a few days ago, last month, in the Eurasian Times, one up on China, Japan commissions stealthy Kawasaki submarine to defend choke points and ambush PLA Navy, People's Liberation Army Navy. That means the Chinese Navy. The submarine is expected to defend choke points and ambush Chinese submarines. Okay, ambush Chinese submarines. Okay, we kind of imagine what that means. In the East China Sea and Sea of Japan before they break out into the Pacific Ocean, as per a plan envisaged by US strategists, according to Nikkei Asia. So Australia people in Australia are very worried about the situation. People in Japan are very worried about the situation. So this is a very, very serious topic. I do not deny that. So the question that I received a few days ago, quote, I changed one word. I think I prefer effective. It was another word, but anyway. With the rise of China and the tensions in the Indo-Pacific, how can we promote an effective dialogue between the Western powers and China to avoid violent conflict? So the question originally was to avoid conflict. And this is fantastic because this is a teachable moment about the basics of peace studies. The basics of peace studies is the difference between conflict and violence. So in peace studies, conflict is absolutely not a problem. We have conflicts within ourselves. We have conflicts every day with our loved ones. We have conflicts with neighbors, with co-workers. And of course, there's lots of conflicts between Ms. Panda and Ms. Eagle. And throughout the world, there are conflicts. Conflicts are not a problem. It's part of life. The problem is violence. Violent conflict is the problem. So the question is perfect if you just insert violent right there. So based on this understanding that to be able to move towards peace building, we have to accept conflict as part of life, but then work very hard at how we handle conflicts, how we manage conflict, or how we transform conflict. Some conflicts will remain forever, protracted conflict or wicked problems, but we can still transform them in a non-violent way. So that brings us to a definition of peace by someone considered the founder of peace studies, one of the founders of peace and conflict studies, but the founder of peace studies. Quote, by peace, we mean the capacity to transform conflicts with empathy, without violence, and creatively, a never-ending process. So I think this is really, really important because Johan Galtung is talking about human virtues. And I know that at the Ikeda Studies Center, you are all experts of human values, namely courage, wisdom, compassion as the beginning of everything you can do in life. This is very, very similar, that peace building, whatever you can do for peace starts with your own empathy, nonviolence, and creativity. So I'd like to make 2 points today. The first point is this, that the choice of effective dialogue, to decide to invest in becoming more authentic, more coming from your core, being yourself, everything that I'm sure Maria talked about. How do you use this to then connect with other human beings and also encourage them to speak from the heart? And that would be effective dialogue. The choice of effective dialogue, respect for the dignity of life, peaceful conflict transformation with empathy, nonviolence, and creativity requires a big jump into an ocean of hope, courage, wisdom, and compassion, and an indestructible confidence in the uniqueness and potential of each person. So to really be in that space where, despite all the news, despite what could happen, despite what is happening in Ukraine, in Sudan, in many different places, to still make the choice of effective dialogue, it's very important to believe in the potential of each human being, including yourself. And it sometimes requires a big jump from whatever it is we believe in now into that space. So instead of preaching about how to get into that space, I'd like to simply share an example. I really apologize. Those are 2 men, but we're still here trying to create value. So let's talk about those 2 people who made that jump and devoted their life to respect for the dignity of life and for effective dialogue. And they are Albert Camus and Daisaku Ikeda. And the second point I'm going to make is to answer the part of the question about an effective dialogue between Western powers and China. I'd like to give an example of a dialogue between Japan and China, and then we can maybe find inspiration there. So let us see what has been done concretely by Daisaku Ikeda concerning relationships with China. I hope this will provide a source of inspiration pointing to a hopeful direction. So first point, the big jump. So as some of you know, some of you have read a chapter or 2, some of you have read the whole book. 2010, Daisaku Ikeda's Philosophy of Peace was published, and now I'm working in collaboration with many people on an update of the book, which is slated for 2030, and that's Daisaku Ikeda's Philosophy of Peace 2.0. And we have already 3 chapters on the way, and those are oral chapters and interactive chapters. So anybody in the room who is interested can ask me later. But right now, there's a chapter going on with Alex on narratives, on stories, on tales, legends, a chapter with Emma on music and peace building. And other people are welcome to let me know if they'd like to work on a chapter, like I announced last year. And then there is a chapter on the way with Jeremy on Albert Camus, the amazing common points between Albert Camus' life and philosophy and Daisaku Ikeda's life and philosophy. So far, my favorite passage is from The Almond Trees, 1940. The French is on the left. So I really love this quote because it's about hope. It's kind of like this image of winter, at least in many countries. Winter always turns to spring. Not in Hawaii, it's always summer there. But I think in Quebec, you are also looking forward to spring when it's winter, right? It's a long, long winter. And in Japan too, and also in North Africa. Quote from Albert Camus. When I lived in Algiers, I was always patient in the winter because I knew that in one night, a single cold and pure night in February, the almond trees of the Valley of the Consuls would be covered with white flowers. I was amazed to then see this fragile snow withstand all the rain and the sea wind. Each year, however, it persisted just enough to prepare the fruit. So I think it's a really amazing image of hope, that even if the winter is long and there's nothing happening, or actually there's a tremendous misery, it's totally possible that in one night, the flower is going to come and they will be strong. They will remain, they will withstand the rain and the sea wind and everything. So when I read this passage in Camus, the phrase from Ikeda that emerged in my mind is, it's short, but very powerful, I think. If there is no hope, create some. So when we think about international relations, or we see people getting killed by the thousands in Europe today, or in Africa, or in many other parts of the world, we might, be justified to just like forget about it and just focus on our daily life. That's totally natural. Or to focus on it but become desperate. So it's very important, if we want our brains to function properly and to be able to think about possible solutions and have meaningful dialogues with other people, we better start with hope. If there is no hope, create some. To create this type of hope, Camus tells us that we need a spirit of rebellion against the status quo. He was talking about Europe at the time and North Africa and the world during and after the Second World War. But what he said can be applied to the world situation today, because dialogue, love, and friendship are in danger. We will see that he recommends that we make the choice of nonviolence, boundless generosity, and a strong belief in solidarity. And those are exactly the themes that have preoccupied Soka Ikeda his whole life and until now, and even now, the same very important theme. So I was looking for a free picture of almond flowers that he's talking about, this white snow that he's talking about, something that would be in the public domain. And actually, I didn't know that Vincent van Gogh himself has painted those famous almond blossoms. So that's the picture right there. So now I'd like to share the microphone with my partner and accomplice, Jeremy, who is, among other things, an expert in Camus and has things to say about Camus, dialogue, and hope. Jeremy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And so in a text entitled Towards Dialogue, published in 1946, so just a year after the end of the Second World War, Camus wrote with a great sense of urgency the following, I quote, "What I think needs to be done is simply this. In the midst of a murderous world, we must decide to reflect and choose. Across 5 continents, an endless struggle between violence and preaching will rage in the years to come. And it is true that the former is 1,000 times more likely to succeed than the latter." End quote. And that is exactly why we must rebel and revolt. In this next passage, he also shares his belief that the spirit of dialogue is in danger. It must be defended at all costs. I quote, "Dialogue in personal relations have been replaced by propaganda or polemic, which are 2 kinds of monologue. Abstraction, which belongs to the world of power and calculation, have replaced the real passions, which are in the domain of the flesh and of the irrational. The ration coupon substituted for bread, love and friendship submitted to a doctrine, and destiny to a plan." End of quote. So our world has changed so very little since it was first written by Camus, in 1951. In the great powers' quest for supremacy, economic growth, and global leadership, we have but entirely relinquished compassion, courage, and friendship between nations, viewing each other as mere abstractions, or even worse, as enemies. Would you skip to the next slide, please?
All right, ready? Go.
Good. In order to promote dialogue instead of violence, Camus tells us that we need a spirit of rebellion and of insane generosity for humanity as a whole. I quote, "Then we understand that rebellion cannot exist without a strange form of love. This insane generosity is the generosity of rebellion, which unhesitantly gives the strength of its love and without a moment's delay refuses injustice. Real generosity towards the future lies in giving all to the present." End of quote. Without this compassion, we are all estranged from each other, and we become mere strangers to others and even to ourselves. It is from this strange form of love that emanates true justice and freedom for the entirety of humanity. This is what it takes to build solidarity. Camus writes the following, and I quote, "Humanity's solidarity is founded upon rebellion, and rebellion, in its turn, can only find its justification in this very solidarity. In the same way, this solidarity comes to life only on the level of rebellion." End quote. What does this mean? So, rather than raising our citizens and our future diplomats in a way as to view other countries and nations as mere abstractions, such as numbers, as a territory, or as an economic growth level, we must encompass values to guide our sphere of action. These values are not mere humanistic platitudes, but rather existential beliefs that are essential for true dialogue and friendship. This subjective and existential side of dialogue is not learned about in university, nor in any modern academic institution for that matter. This solidarity is necessarily experienced from the heart and is to be freely chosen by individuals who truly understand the interwoven nature of existence and of the absurd condition of humanity. In conclusion, Camus recommends that we place all our hope in this sort of rebellious and generous dialogue. I quote, "Henceforth, there will only be one honorable choice, to wager everything on the belief that in the end, words will only prove stronger than bullets." Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. Well done. So those who have studied the work of Ikeda, I'm sure you are really impressed by the fact that, wow, this is something that Ikeda could have written or has written very, very, very similar. So this is the kind of work that we do with those chapters towards 2030. So anyone in the room interested in doing this together, just let me know, send me an email after the conference, and we'll see if there is a theme that can be fleshed out. All right, the second part and last part of my talk is about Daisaku Ikeda in China. What has Ikeda done? What kind of actions, concrete actions, has he taken in his relationship with Chinese people, with the country? And so the message I want to share through this is that maybe there is something there that you can, oh, wow, yeah, this is possible. We can do the same. So there are four different parts: the 1968 declaration, the friendship with Zhou Enlai, a musical tale called Toki, and the Ikeda research centers in China. So first, the 1968 declaration. It's a bit complicated, and as I mentioned, I'm really not an expert in international relations. So this is from the daisakuikeda.org website. So I will just read what's on the screen, and I think it becomes very clear. And the picture on the right is actually 1968 Ikeda delivering that speech. So I'm just going to read. On September 8, 1968, then Soka President Daisaku Ikeda made a groundbreaking proposal for the normalization of Sino-Japanese relations at a meeting of more than 10,000 students in Tokyo. In it, he called on Japan to lead in building ties with China, stating, Japan is uniquely positioned to make a decisive contribution to helping to ease China's isolation. The factors in this are the proximity of China and Japan, both in terms of historical tradition and ethnic origin, as well, of course, as geography. So the question here is, what do you feel would be a good reason for you personally to move towards China? Do you have Chinese friends or people of Chinese origin who are your friends or loved ones? Or is there anything that you love about China? The food, the music, the history, the traditions. So that kind of movement from the heart. So 50 years after that declaration, for instance, at a forum commemorating the 50th anniversary of this declaration on September 8, 2018, at Soka University in Tokyo, Gao Hong of the Chinese Association of Japanese Studies, one of the many Chinese scholars who were there, mentioned, 50 years ago, the world was in the midst of the Cold War, and China and Japan had no diplomatic relations yet. So this is important because when Ikeda proposes the normalization of Sino-Japanese relations, you have to understand that they were not there. The war, had just finished a few years before, like 13 years before. So there were no diplomatic relations between China and Japan. 50 years ago, the world was in the midst of the Cold War, and China and Japan had no diplomatic relations yet. The ideas and actions that President Ikeda proposed against the background were filled with courage and wisdom, those are his words, far-reaching vision and deep insight. So I think you can hear the kind of revolt that Camille was talking about. Okay, we have a status quo, no normalization, but Ikeda felt this is very important and gave a speech, and he got attacked severely by the right wing, by the war hawks, by all kinds of people. But still, something happened in the world, and 4 years later, the normalization happened. So on September 29, 1972, 4 years after the speech, Japan normalized diplomatic relations with China. Is it because of Ikeda? We don't know. It's impossible. Cause and effect is really mysterious. And maybe it has nothing to do with what he said. However, that was a cause. That was a good cause. So we can all think about that today. What kind of causes do we want to make? Second example of something we can do is personal friendship with Zhou Enlai. In December 1974, when Ikeda visited China for the second time, he met with Premier Zhao. Although the Chinese premier was hospitalized with terminal cancer at the time, he insisted on meeting with Ikeda. So Ikeda was in China for an official meeting at the time, and he was sorry he couldn't meet Premier Zhao, who he really wanted to meet him, but he couldn't because he was in the hospital. And then a messenger came, a message from Zhao, who was in the hospital, said, please come now. So he left the meeting and went to see him, and this is the picture. And as you can see, he's holding his arm, because even to shake hands, Zhao had difficulties because of the weakness of his body. But his spirit was there, believing that China and Japan could have even better relationships. So Lin Lian, a member of the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee who interpreted, she was the interpreter between the two for the Zhao-Ikeda meeting, recalls the encounter. Quote, not only was President Ikeda eager to meet Premier Zhao, but Premier Zhao, though his serious illness left him in no condition to see anyone, went out of his way to meet President Ikeda. The Premier's illness had taken a severe toll on his body, so the Soka president naturally took the elder man's arm in support. Third example is the dance drama Toki. So it's based on a true story, and the story goes like this. There in Japan, there is a bird called the crested ibis, and the word in Japanese is the Toki. And it looks like a crane, but it's different. It's amazing. When it flies, it's like becomes pink. with the sunlight, and it's just amazing. So the Japanese are very proud of it, and they've called it the Japanese crested ibis for centuries. But with pollution, with hunting, and then with the Second World War, you know, the population dwindled, and basically they completely disappeared from Japan after the Second World War, and then there was just one left, and then if you have one, that's it, right? However, the same Toki, the same DNA population with the same DNA was found in China. So to make a long tale short, the Chinese government and the Japanese government agreed that some couples of Toki from China would be transferred to Japan to repopulate Japan so that the Toki can be in Japan again. And it worked very well. So today you have regions of Japan with lots of those Toki, even though they disappear. So that's the story. And that's another way to build friendship between countries, to focus on natural disaster or natural event or saving animal species, climate change. There's so many things we can do with, between, you know, that countries can do together. So this crested ibis really inspired Chinese composers and dancers in Shanghai. So there's a dance troupe in Shanghai that decided to create an entire dance drama. It's like a musical, but without lyrics, music and dance, about this whole story of this bird. And it became very popular in China. So the concert association that was established by Ikeda in 1963, specifically to improve relationships between countries through music. That's why Min On was created. So this organization called Min On, which means the music of the people in Japanese, became very interested in that drama, which was, you know, touring China. So they went to Shanghai and they met the people, you know, the producers of this dance drama, and they discussed about could we organize a tour in Japan. But the way it was designed was really for the Chinese public who knows about the history from their side. The Japanese people would be a little bit confused about some elements. So they negotiated and they recreated. They didn't change too much, but they changed a little bit. They agreed on that. They negotiated and they changed the story for the Japanese public. And then Toki came to, I mean, the drama came to Japan in 2015. So let's take a little musical break. It's like 4.5 minutes of a summary of the entire drama. And I think it's really lovely music and beautiful dance. So you're going to see a story of a couple of Toki who create their nest and everything, and they're very happy together. But then there's pollution, there's hunting, and the lady bird dies, and actually they all die, and then there's no more Toki. But somebody finds a trace of the Toki and is able to make them revive, and the finale is like the revival of the Toki. So you're going to see the whole show like this. But first I have to make sure that I'm sharing the sound. So let me see. Am I sharing the sound? Okay. No, I'm not. So click here, share the sound. All right, let's do an experiment. The first few minutes, see if it works. Back to full screen and click on the link. Okay. Sorry, it's a little bit loud at the beginning. Okay. Okay. Can somebody yell yes if you hear it?
We can hear, but we cannot see the video.
Oh, thank you. Let me reshare then. Okay. All right. How is this?
It's good.
Okay, great.
Just put it full screen.
All right. Full screen here.
Yeah.
And start. All right. So let's enjoy for 4 or 5 minutes. Okay, back to screen. All right, trying to find my PowerPoint, it's gone. So I'm going to stop share and find it again. Okay. Oh, here it is. All right. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. All right, complete silence. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So that was in 2015 when the tour was organized. It was all over Japan, really incredible success. I mean, it's always successful with Milan, but especially that one. And there was even an event where there was a big problem between China and Japan already at the time with the islands that are military islands that are built and all that. So, but still, the high official of the Communist Party was in Japan and was compelled to see the drama together with the Prime Minister of Japan. So they didn't create world peace by sitting next to each other, but at least they agreed that, okay, at least we can watch this together. Right. So it was supposed to come back in 2020 and go again all over Japan, a great demand for that. But with the pandemic, everything was canceled. So I hope it's going to come back soon. But there are even more tensions now between Japan and China. So we would have to rebel against that for the show to come back. Now, the final part of my speech, I'm going to be a little bit over time. There are Ikeda research centers in China. And I went to several conferences a few years ago. They usually have a conference like once a year, and all the university centers get together and have a big Ikeda conference in China. So why would so many educational scholars and educators and students in China be interested in a Japanese man's philosophy of life, pedagogy, and teaching?
Sorry,
So
Olivier, we don't see the PowerPoint. I don't know if you try to show
thank you.
something, but
Okay.
we don't see
Yes, yes. Okay.
Thanks.
So let me share the screen properly again. Okay. Oh, I see. Like this, and then like this, right? Okay, can you see the Ikeda Research Centers?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me put the full screen. So I asked the Chinese scholars there, why are you so interested in the a Japanese philosopher and a Japanese educator? And they said, well, we have lots of people to educate. China was growing by leaps and bounds, and we need to find the best education for our students, our people. And we don't really want to go back to the old Confucian tradition, which is full of problems. And we don't want to copy the West either. But in Daisaku Ikeda, we found a humanistic philosophy that is not, we don't feel it's Japanese, or we don't feel it's national anything. We feel it's really about the core qualities of human beings and how they can help each other becoming educated. And therefore, my university has decided to create a center. And many times it's because a professor of that university went to Japan and met with Daisaku Ikeda for dialogue, and then came back to China and said, we have to create a center. So you can see, for example, here, there is this April at Soka University, Japan, there is a whole course entitled Ikeda Research in China, because it's a topic. And it's an omnibus course, so you have a guest professor each time, and you can see people coming from China, from those universities that have an Ikeda center, Tianjin, Dalian Maritime, Soka University Beijing office, of course, Nankai University, Guangdong University, Hunan, Dalian, Peking University, Peking Normal University, etc., etc. So if you look at the numbers below, 48, 61, so you have to imagine a whole center just like the one you are sitting in now. A university decides to establish an Ikeda center based on the board of directors voting and checking and peer reviewing and everything. And okay, let's create that and put a whole budget to make it happen. So it's not an easy thing to do. But there are today 48, that's the first number. There are 48 Ikeda research centers in China. And there are 61 in the world. There's one in Spain, there's a few in the States. So there are 61 Ikeda studies center in the world, not 60, 61. Why am I saying that? Well, because there's one at Laval, so it's 61. So you are part of this. So just an idea, would it be a good idea to create more links with the Ikeda Research Center in Tokyo, and from there with the 48 research centers in China? That would be potentially an avenue for dialogue between the West and China to answer the question. So, homo homini lupus? Really? Are we so dangerous to each other that we have to be careful and have nuclear weapons and submarines and kind of stuff to protect each other against the other very bad wolves? Or is that just the product of a certain way of thinking that does not have to be like that? So just final 2 lines: the path of propaganda, polarization, violence, and destruction always leads to direct structural and cultural violence. Whereas the path of authenticity, interconnectedness, and dialogue can lead, if we make lots of efforts together, to direct structural and cultural peace building. Last slide, quote from Daisaku Ikeda. The 2 wheels that carry dialogue forward are a belief that everyone possesses goodness within, and a spirit of unflagging determination to tap and draw out that goodness. Right? Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci Olivier. Petite note
Merci Vincent pour
francophone.
l'invitation.
Petite note francophone. Est-ce qu'il y aurait des questions, éventuellement des commentaires? Bon, Max, ça suffit un petit peu à soi-même, mais enfin, sait-on jamais? Est-ce que il y a autre chose à faire fleurir après ça? Ou on se donne rendez-vous au Japon l'année prochaine sur le campus de l'université Soka?
Oui, on vous attend, hein, on vous attend, c'est sûr. Et moi, j'ai une question pour tout le monde. Qu'est-ce qui vous intéresse dans les relations internationales, dans ce qui se passe dans le monde aujourd'hui? Et si vous avez l'occasion d'étudier un petit peu avec Vincent Fauque, professeur Vincent Fauque au Centre Ikeda, quel aspect du travail du centre seriez-vous intéressé d'approfondir un petit peu? Qu'est-ce qui vous intéresse quand vous vous réveillez le matin, vous voyez le monde? Qu'est-ce qui vous fait peur? Qu'est-ce qui vous intrigue? Sur quoi travaillez-vous? Quels sont les... Vous êtes encore en examen? Quels sont les examens à préparer la semaine prochaine? Voilà, vous pouvez partager ce que vous voulez. Et Marianne!
Bonjour. Moi, je vais vous dire merci beaucoup pour la présentation. Puis c'est vraiment intéressant comment que vous amenez toujours des belles pièces d'or, peu importe le sujet qu'on parle. Donc, merci pour ça. Je voudrais, pour votre question, là, il y a beaucoup de questions maintenant que vous avez posées, mais ce qui m'a sonné à l'oreille, c'est un peu d'être capable de voir justement dans toutes les nouvelles qu'on a sur le monde aujourd'hui, on parle souvent de conflits, de problèmes, de catastrophes qui arrivent, d'être capable de discuter entre nous, puis être capable de voir ces problèmes-là d'un autre œil, avec une vision plus humaniste, puis une vision plus justement là, selon la vision de Ikeda, avec une vision plus avec de créer l'espoir quand il n'y en a pas, justement. Donc, c'est un peu ça que je trouve intéressant quand on discute soit avec vous, entre nous. Donc, très plaisir.
Merci, merci bien.
Bah, je pensais aussi une introduction pour beaucoup, en tout cas, c'est une introduction à réaliser l'ampleur du dialogue, de ce que c'est que le dialogue. Parce que, bon, c'est une chose, je veux dire, qui est abordée vraiment dans la pensée d'Ikeda, qui est incarnée dans le travail qu'on fait au centre, proprement dit, de réaliser à quel point, on en a eu un bon exemple, je pense, avec Maria tout à l'heure, à quel point cette notion-là, l'amplitude, je dirais, de la notion de dialogue, le rôle stratégique du dialogue, comment est-ce qu'on le transforme et comment est-ce que ça nous amène à une transformation existentielle nous-mêmes, je dirais. Pas quelque chose d'abstrait, quelque chose qu'on pratique, on en découvre l'amplitude, je dirais, et puis à partir de ce moment-là, comment est-ce qu'on le pratique, comment on peut se rattacher aux activités du Centre Ikeda, c'est ce que je vous propose, moi en tout cas, à plus long terme, parce qu'on attend vos idées, c'est ça aussi, hein. Bon, on a un cadre, pensez-y, réfléchissez à tout ça, et puis on est en lien évidemment par le courriel, bien sûr, et puis il y a d'autres activités qui s'en viennent à partir de l'automne et autres, là, c'est un travail en progrès, on est work in progress, comme on dit en anglais, parce qu'il y a beaucoup de choses qui s'en viennent, et ça dépend vraiment de votre détermination, votre intérêt, et de la détermination de faire avancer les choses véritablement. Sachant que de toute façon, on n'attend pas d'être 3000, je dirais, pour agir. Un individu, ça c'est une des choses très importantes, je voudrais quand même le rappeler, une des choses les plus importantes que j'ai appris, moi, je dirais, en étudiant la pensée du docteur Ikeda, c'est quand il nous dit, à toute fin pratique, le pouvoir de la vie humaine. Évidemment, la problématique, elle est générale, c'est-à-dire qu'on voit l'amplitude des problèmes auxquels est confronté le monde contemporain, et la réaction, évidemment, c'est de baisser les bras, parce qu'on ne sait pas par quel bout prendre un monstre comme celui-là, je dirais la nature des problèmes qui se posent au monde contemporain. Réponse, le président Ikeda, le docteur Ikeda l'explique, le président docteur, il l'explique à un moment donné en disant « Découvrez le pouvoir d'une seule personne ». Ça, je pense que c'est un message qui est adressé particulièrement à la jeunesse en général, je dirais à tout être humain, découvrez le pouvoir de votre vie. Le pouvoir et l'influence, il y a les deux. Quand on manifeste un pouvoir avec une détermination, quand on est branché sur la bonté, ce qu'on a dit en dernier, ça peut paraître utopique. Inspirez-le, développez-le, expérimentez-le, je dirais proprement dit, le pouvoir d'une seule personne et son influence. Et puis aussi parce que ça commence par soi-même, puisqu'on a parlé de transformation intérieure, au chapitre 5 de ton ouvrage Inner Transformation, déterminant à ce niveau-là, de révéler vraiment à quel point on peut développer cet universalisme intérieur. Ce n'est pas une abstraction intellectuelle, ça s'expérimente. Et puis à partir de là, comment est-ce qu'on peut engager l'action pour nous-mêmes, pour les autres, et vérifier dans notre environnement, dans nos environnements, je dirais à quel point, effectivement, quand on fait monter notre état de vie, quand on fait monter cette espérance-là, véritablement, eh bien, on a une capacité de rayonnement qui est beaucoup plus importante que celle qu'on pourrait penser initialement. C'est une découverte. Moi, je vous invite vraiment à vous inscrire dans cette logique-là. On existe, on se développe, et puis ça ne demande qu'à fleurir. Donc, ça dépend de vous. Proposez-nous des choses, proposez-nous des choses. Réfléchissez-y, écrivez-nous, proposez-nous des choses. On se réunit facilement, ce n'est pas un problème, je dirais. Et puis, on a très beaux lieux de réunion aussi qui nous sont ouverts en permanence, parce que le centre existe avec la bénédiction, si on peut dire, de l'Université Laval, l'appui de 3 facultés, l'appui de la rectrice qui est très heureuse de voir ça se développer, Madame Damour, le recteur Brière avant ça, Madame Damour aujourd'hui, et le prochain recteur, et celui d'après encore, parce que c'est l'année à fleurir. Message reçu. Olivier, tu as juste à souffler dans notre voile à travers l'océan Pacifique, et puis, comme tu nous as toujours soutenus depuis le début.
C'est une grande joie, c'est un très grand plaisir, très stimulant. J'avais aucune idée comment parler de relations internationales. D'abord, même le thème général, c'est pas du tout ma spécialité, mais alors en plus, la Chine et l'Occident. Et donc, je me suis mis à ChatGPT. Voilà. En 3 secondes, j'ai créé un compte et voilà, hop, j'y suis. Et donc, j'ai posé la question et en quelques centaines de secondes, j'ai eu 3 pages de suggestions. Et j'ai utilisé aucune des suggestions pour ma présentation, mais simplement le fait qu'il y avait des suggestions, ça m'a réveillé. Je me dis, bah oui, en fait, c'est vrai qu'il y a plein d'idées sur le sujet. Et donc, ChatGPT peut servir aussi à ça, pour donner confiance, pour inspirer que, en fait, oui, tous les sujets sont abordables aujourd'hui. Et donc, c'est grâce à cette conférence-ci que maintenant, ça y est, je suis initié à la nouvelle phase de notre relation avec l'intelligence artificielle. Donc, un grand merci pour ça.
Comment on peut conclure? On te remercie d'abord, Olivier, bien sûr, évidemment. Il est petit matin à Tokyo. Bah, pour petit matin, là, et pour vous, il est 10 h du matin, là, à peu près.
Maintenant, il est 10 h, oui.
Il est 10 h, voilà. On va te libérer pour ta journée. Je ne pense pas que tu enseignes aujourd'hui, j'imagine.
Non, c'est fini pour aujourd'hui. Merci. C'est le week-end. Pardon, excusez-moi, non, désolé, c'est la fin de semaine.
Ça marche. Bah, écoute, à la toute prochaine fois. Olivier a dit un truc. Ah, oui, quelque chose d'autre, oui.
Non,
Tu vas bien?
on va peut-être dire au revoir à
Oui. Namrata and Maria, are you with us?
Yes, we are.
So,
I am.
we would like to thank you very much for what you have done for us, today.
Not at all.
You will speak about us pretty soon, I would say. Merci encore. Thank you very much again. Merci,
Thank
Maria.
you all. Thank
Merci,
you. And
Maria.
thank you, Olivia. I enjoyed listening to yours as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maya.
Me too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful to see you again. Bye.